I told my daughter she's not one of my two daughters. Imagine pouring your entire life, every drop of love and sacrifice, into your child, only to have them tell you, point blank, that you are simply not good enough. That's where my story begins, but trust me, it's not where it ends. I was only 22 when my marriage to Derek shattered. I stood in that sterile courthouse hallway, my 3-year-old daughter, Sophia, a tiny anchor clinging to my leg. Those divorce papers felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds, but holding Sophia's hand, I told myself, at least I have her. My baby girl, my whole world. Derek had cheated, gotten caught, and then just gave up. He barely fought for custody. Every other weekend, Wednesday dinners, he signed the papers without a whisper of an argument, looking almost relieved to walk away. It hurt, deeply, but I swallowed it down. It didn't matter, I insisted to myself. Sophia and I would be fine. We were a team, just the two of us against the world. I threw myself into motherhood. Got a job as a dental hygienist, found a small apartment near her future elementary school. Every single decision revolved around Sophia's happiness, her security. Every dollar I earned? It was for her. Those first 2 years after the divorce were brutally hard, but they were also, in their own way, beautiful. Money was tighter than tight. There were so many nights I ate instant ramen so Sophia could have her chicken nuggets and fruit. Our apartment was tiny, just 2 bedrooms, thin walls, a kitchen you could barely turn around in. But I made it ours. Cozy. With second-hand furniture and curtains I sewed myself. Sophia's room was painted lavender, her absolute favorite color. I spent an entire weekend hand-painting butterflies on one wall, Sophia, even at 5 years old, meticulously directing me on which shade of purple to use. My smart, stubborn little girl, who looked exactly like me, dark, curly hair, and those incredible green eyes that seemed to see everything. Our weekends were magic. Feeding ducks at the park, story time at the library, building elaborate blanket forts that swallowed our living room. Sunday mornings, she'd stand on a chair at the stove, me holding her steady, letting her help flip pancakes, even if half of them ended up on the floor. Derek was consistent at first. Every other Friday, exactly at 6 p.m., his shiny new truck would pull up. Sophia would fly into his arms, pure, unadulterated joy radiating from her. I'd watch her go, a fixed smile on my face, then spend the weekend cleaning, meal prepping, trying desperately not to notice how utterly silent the apartment was without her. He'd bring her back Sunday nights, and she'd be bursting with stories about the movies they saw, the fancy restaurants they went to, places I could only dream of taking her. I battled a vicious jealousy, reminding myself it was good for her to have a father who showed up, even if that father had destroyed our family. I packed my hurt away, deep in a box in my chest, and focused on being present when she was home. Our Wednesday dinners were quick affairs at a diner near his apartment. I'd drop her off at 6, pick her up at 8. 2 hours I spent sitting in my car in the parking lot, doing crossword puzzles, because driving home and back wasted gas I couldn't afford. Then, everything shifted. Derek started dating Vanessa. Sophia was the one who told me. Came home from a weekend visit, absolutely bouncing with excitement about Daddy's new friend who has a big house with a pool. My stomach clenched so tight I thought I might throw up, but I kept the smile plastered on, asking casual questions. What was Vanessa like? Sophia gushed, pretty, nice, gave her a stuffed unicorn that now sat on her bed. I stared at that unicorn, feeling something ugly stir inside me. Not exactly jealousy, but a visceral, protective fear. Someone else was entering my daughter's world, someone with resources I simply didn't have. I pushed it down, told Sophia I was glad she had fun. That night, after she was asleep, I allowed myself 10 minutes to cry in the shower. Then I pulled myself together. There was no point dwelling on things I couldn't control. Derek had every right to date. I just hoped Vanessa was good to my daughter. Over the next 6 months, Vanessa became a permanent fixture in Sophia's weekend stories. The big house became their house when Derek moved in. The pool? It was Olympic-sized with a slide. Vanessa's car was described in reverent tones, the shiniest thing Sophia had ever seen. 8 months into dating, Derek proposed. Suddenly, my ex-husband was marrying into serious money. Vanessa's family owned a chain of car dealerships across 3 states. And from what I could piece together from Sophia's innocent observations, Vanessa had never worked a day in her life. She spent her time decorating their house, planning charity galas, and apparently showering my daughter with gifts. Sophia started coming home with new clothes, brand new toys, stories about shopping trips to stores I'd only ever seen in magazines. I watched Sophia's eyes light up describing Vanessa's walk-in closet, and my own inadequacy hit me like a physical weight. Our apartment felt smaller, shabbier with each visit. The butterflies I'd painstakingly painted on her wall suddenly looked childish, pathetic, next to whatever designer nursery Vanessa had probably created. Sophia was 7 when the shift became undeniable. She started complaining about our apartment, asking why we couldn't have a house like Daddy's. I gently explained that houses cost a lot of money, that we were happy right where we were, pointing out all the special things about our home. She'd sigh dramatically, a little adult sigh, and retreat to her room with her new iPad, a gift from Vanessa, something I couldn't have afforded if I saved for a year. Her attitude during our weekdays grew less enthusiastic. She'd pick at the dinners I made, casually mentioning that Vanessa's cook makes better versions of everything. When I suggested our usual weekend activities, she'd wrinkle her nose, asking if we could do something else, something more exciting. The library was boring. The park? So over it. She wanted the trampoline park, the indoor water park, places that cost money I didn't have. I tried to explain budgets, that some things were special treats, not every weekend activities. But I could see the comparisons forming in her mind. I was the mother who said no. Vanessa was the one who said yes to everything. By the time Sophia turned 8, Derek started canceling Wednesday dinners. A last-minute text, an apology, something came up, or Vanessa planned something. I'd have to tell Sophia, watching her face crumple with disappointment, then try to cheer her up by making our own special dinner. The weekend visits, though, remained consistent. And Sophia's excitement for them grew, while her enthusiasm for our time together visibly dimmed. She started asking if she could stay at Daddy's house for longer, maybe the whole week instead of just weekends. I patiently explained that wasn't how our custody agreement worked, that I was her primary parent. She lived with me. She looked at me with those green eyes, wide and innocent, and asked why. In a small voice that cut through me like glass, she asked why she had to live in our tiny apartment when Daddy's house had a room just for her, with an ensuite bathroom and a balcony. I didn't have an answer that didn't sound hollow, that didn't just boil down to "I'm your mother and I love you," which suddenly felt utterly inadequate against the material advantages Derek could provide. The real deterioration began when Sophia was 9. She started actively resisting our time together, dragging her feet about coming home from Derek's on Sunday nights. He'd pull up to drop her off, and I'd watch through the windshield as she argued with him, visible through the glass. Finally, she'd stomp into our apartment, red-eyed, a hostile expression clouding her face. She'd go straight to her room without a word, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the picture frames. When I tried to discuss her behavior, she'd snap, "You don't understand anything. You're ruining my life by making me live in this stupid apartment and go to this stupid school." She had friends at the private academy near Derek's house, friends with big houses and nice things, and she was embarrassed to invite them over. The butterflies on her wall? Babyish. Everything about our life, she implied, was embarrassing compared to what Vanessa could provide. Each word was a tiny, precisely aimed knife, twisting into my deepest insecurities. I tried to stay calm, to parent through it. But at night, I'd lie awake, wondering if I was failing her. By not being able to give her the material things she wanted. Money became an obsession for Sophia, in ways that genuinely disturbed me. She started asking pointed questions about my salary, about why I didn't get a better job, about whether I could marry someone rich, like Daddy did. I tried to explain that money wasn't everything, that our love and our time together mattered more than possessions. But I could see the words just bouncing off her. She'd been seduced by the lifestyle Derek and Vanessa offered, and my modest life looked like utter failure in comparison. She started refusing to wear the clothes I bought her, claiming they were cheap and everyone at school could tell. She wanted name brands, things I couldn't afford, even on sale. When I said no, she'd throw explosive tantrums that left us both exhausted and crying. Derek wasn't helping. When I called to discuss Sophia's behavior, asking if he could talk to her about gratitude and perspective, he'd make vague, agreeing noises, then do absolutely nothing. Vanessa, I suspected, was probably encouraging the materialism, buying Sophia's affection with gifts I simply couldn't compete with. The visits became increasingly irregular when Sophia turned 10. She'd beg to stay extra nights at Derek's, promising she'd do all her homework, that I could pack her school things to bring over. I held firm at first, insisting on our custody schedule, but the fights were becoming unbearable. Every Sunday night was a battle. Every Monday morning, she'd be sullen and angry, deliberately slow, making us both late. Her grades started slipping because she claimed she couldn't concentrate in our small space. When I finally gave in and let her stay Sunday through Wednesday at Derek's, she perked up immediately. I told myself it was temporary, that we'd get back to normal once this phase passed. But deep down, I knew. I was losing her to a life I couldn't provide. The realization sat in my chest like a stone, heavy and cold and utterly undeniable. By 11 years old, Sophia was spending more time at Derek's house than mine. What started as extended weekends became full weeks, with occasional overnight visits to my apartment that felt more like obligations she was grudgingly fulfilling than time she wanted to spend. She'd come over on Wednesday evenings, eat dinner in hostile silence while texting her friends on the phone Vanessa had bought her, then retreat to her room until I drove her back to Derek's on Thursday mornings. Our conversations became transactional. Did you finish your homework? Yes. How was school? Fine. Want to watch a movie together? I'm tired. The daughter who used to crawl into my lap for stories was gone, replaced by this stranger who looked at me with something close to contempt. I tried everything. Special outings, her favorite meals, engaging with her new interests, even expensive hobbies like horseback riding that Vanessa funded. Nothing worked. I was fighting a losing battle against unlimited resources and a child who had learned to measure love in dollar signs. By the way, if you're still with me through this roller coaster of a story, please hit that subscribe button. More unbelievable, raw, and hopefully, inspiring stories are coming your way. The conversation that changed everything happened on a Wednesday evening when Sophia was 12. I'd made her favorite dinner, chicken parmesan with garlic bread, and set the table with candles, foolishly hoping we could have one nice meal together. She walked in from school, dropped her designer backpack by the door, and looked at the table with visible disdain. I asked her to sit down, my voice probably too bright, too desperate. She sighed, an impossibly dramatic sigh, and slumped into her chair. We ate in silence for a few minutes before I tried to start a conversation about her day. One-word answers, eyes glued to her phone. I finally asked her to put it away during dinner. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. Vanessa lets me use my phone at meals, she said, the comparison hanging in the air between us, sharp and deliberate. Something in my chest cracked. Very quietly, I asked, "Are you happier at Derek's house than with me?" She met my eyes for the first time all evening. "Yes," she said. Just that one word. It devastated me more than I ever knew words could. I sat there, looking at my 12-year-old daughter, this person I'd grown inside my body, loved more than anything in the world, and she looked back with that cold, brutal honesty only children sometimes possess. She was happier there. In the big house with the pool and the cook and the woman who had everything I didn't. I asked her why, even though I already knew the answer. She launched into a list, ticking points off on her fingers. The house is better. My room is better. Vanessa takes me shopping and to nice restaurants. I have writing lessons and art classes and a tutor for math. My friends from private school all live in that neighborhood. I don't have to be embarrassed about where I live. With me, she said, everything was just hard and sad and small. The words poured out like she'd been holding them back for years. And maybe she had. When she finished, she looked almost relieved, like a confession had lightened some unbearable burden. I felt hollowed out, every organ removed, just skin stretched over emptiness. I didn't cry in front of her. I cleared the table in silence while she went back to her phone, then I drove her to Derek's house. That night instead of keeping her until Thursday. I couldn't stand to have her in the apartment another minute. This child who had just articulated every single failure I'd been trying not to acknowledge. Derek answered the door, looking surprised to see us early. I choked out, Sophia wanted to come home, the word catching in my throat because I just learned my apartment wasn't home to her anymore. Vanessa appeared behind him, perfectly styled even at 8 at night, smiling warmly at Sophia. My daughter brushed past me without a goodbye, disappearing into the house. Derek started to say something, but I was already walking back to my car. I drove home and sat in the parking lot for an hour before I could make myself go inside. The apartment felt like a museum of failure. Every detail, a screaming reminder of what I couldn't give her. The next few months were a blur of increasing distance. Sophia stopped coming over on Wednesdays entirely, always some excuse about homework or activities. I still had her on alternating weekends, as per the custody agreement, but she spent most of that time locked in her room or asking when she could go back to Derek's. I tried to talk to her, tried to bridge the gap, but she'd shut down or get angry. Finally, on a Saturday afternoon, after she'd spent 3 hours locked in her room, I knocked on her door. "Can we have an honest conversation?" I asked. She opened the door, an exasperated expression on her face. "Fine," she sighed. I sat on her bed, looking at the faded butterflies I'd painted years ago, now seeming to mock me with their cheerful colors. I asked her what she wanted. Not what I wanted, or Derek wanted, or what the custody agreement said. What did she actually want for her life? She didn't hesitate. She wanted to live with Dad and Vanessa full-time. To go to private school all week. To stop going back and forth. She wanted, she said very clearly, to just have one normal life instead of being split between two worlds where one was obviously better than the other. Every single word was another nail in the coffin of our relationship. I asked if she'd thought about how that would make me feel, if she considered that I loved her, that I wanted to be part of her life. She said yes, she'd thought about it, and she felt bad. But she couldn't keep living this way. It wasn't fair to her, she said, to have to keep pretending our time together was good when she was miserable the whole time. The clinical way she analyzed our relationship, like it was a problem to be solved rather than a bond to be preserved, told me everything I needed to know. She'd already left me emotionally. The physical custody was just paperwork. I called Derek that night. Asked to meet to discuss custody. He agreed immediately, almost eager. We met at a coffee shop near his dealership on Monday morning. He showed up in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, ordered a complicated, frothy drink, and settled into the chair across from me with an expression that tried for sympathy, but couldn't quite hide his relief. I got straight to the point. Sophia wanted to live with him full-time. He nodded, unsurprised. Vanessa and I discussed the possibility, he said, and we'd be happy to have her. The ease with which he said it, like we were discussing a change in carpool schedules rather than dismantling the last threads of my relationship with my daughter, made me want to scream. Instead, I asked what he was proposing. He said they had a lawyer who could draw up modified papers. They'd take full physical custody, and I could have visitation. Maybe 1 weekend a month to start. See how it went. 1 weekend a month. From every day to 1 weekend a month. Like that was a reasonable compromise. Then I asked what Vanessa's role would be in all this. Derek shifted in his seat, the first sign of discomfort he'd shown. He said Vanessa had been discussing the possibility of adoption. If I agreed to modify custody, they'd like to start proceedings to have Vanessa formally adopt Sophia. That way, he explained, Sophia could have Vanessa's last name, be a full legal member of their family. the blood drained from my face. He was asking me to not just give up custody, but to let another woman replace me as Sophia's mother. The coffee shop suddenly felt too hot, too loud, the cheerful chatter from other tables obscuring or ringing in my ears. I asked if Sophia knew about this plan. Derek said yes. They'd discussed it as a family. A family. The three of them had discussed my erasure as a family. And my 12-year-old daughter was excited to replace me. No, I said, my voice shaking. Absolutely not. I'd agree to modified custody if that's what Sophia truly wanted, but I would never agree to let Vanessa adopt her. Derek's expression hardened. He said I was being selfish, putting my feelings ahead of Sophia's happiness and stability. She wants this. Vanessa wants this. It would be better for everyone if we could all move forward cleanly instead of dragging out a situation that's making Sophia miserable. I stood up from the table, my chair scraping loudly. You can talk to my lawyer about custody modification, I told him, but adoption is off the table. Forever. I left before he could respond, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock my car. I sat in the parking lot and called my divorce attorney, Simone, a public defender who'd worked with me pro bono through the original divorce. I explained what Derek was asking. She listened quietly, then said we needed to talk about my options, none of which are good. The legal reality was brutal. Simone explained that if Sophia testified she wanted to live with Derek, the judge would likely grant modified custody, given her age and her ability to articulate her preferences. Fighting it would be expensive, probably unsuccessful, and would damage my relationship with Sophia even further. As for adoption, that couldn't happen without my consent. But Derek's lawyer would probably argue for termination of parental rights if I was only seeing Sophia one weekend a month. They'd claim I was effectively absent from her life, and formal adoption would provide stability. It could take years to wind through the courts, cost tens of thousands I didn't have, and might still end with me losing. Simone's advice? Agree to modified custody, maintain whatever visitation I could get, and refuse to discuss adoption. Stay present in Sophia's life, even in a reduced capacity, and hope that as she got older, she'd understand what she'd lost. I asked what happened if I just said no to everything. Simone said Derek would file anyway, Sophia would testify, and I'd probably end up with even less. The custody modification hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. I spent those weeks in a fog, going through the motions at work, coming home to an apartment that felt like a tomb. Sophia came over twice, both times reluctantly, sitting in hostile silence while I tried to act normal. I didn't tell her about the upcoming hearing. I couldn't bear to have that conversation, to hear her defend her hoist to leave me. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the 3-year-old who used to crawl into this bed during thunderstorms, who'd press her small body against mine and whisper that she loved me more than the whole sky. That child was gone. In her place was someone I didn't recognize, someone who had chosen money and comfort over the mother who'd given up everything to raise her. I knew I should feel angry, but I just felt hollow. Emptied out. Like grief had scooped up my insides and left nothing but a shell. The hearing was held in the same courthouse where Derek and I had finalized our divorce 4 years earlier. The symmetry felt cruel. Another ending in the same beige room with the same fluorescent lights. Derek showed up with Vanessa and a sharp-suited lawyer named Gilbert Crane, who had the polished confidence of someone who never lost. Simone sat beside me, her folders noticeably thinner than Crane's stack of documentation. The judge, a woman in her 50s, probably saw nothing special about our case. Crane presented their case first, painting a picture of Sophia's life with Derek and Vanessa as stable, enriching, supportive. He submitted evidence of her improved grades at private school, letters from teachers, photos of her room, their house. He called Derek to testify about Sophia's happiness, her bond with Vanessa, how the back-and-forth custody was causing stress. Then they called Sophia. I hadn't known she'd be testifying. No one had told me they'd make my 12-year-old daughter take the stand and articulate why she didn't want to live with me anymore. She walked into the courtroom wearing an expensive dress I'd never seen before, her hair professionally styled, looking like a miniature version of Vanessa. She didn't look at me as she took the stand. The judge asked if she understood why she was there, and Sophia said yes, very clearly, in a voice that didn't shake. Crane asked her a series of questions. Where did she feel most at home? With her father and Vanessa. Where did she want to live? With her father and Vanessa. How did she feel about the current custody arrangement? It made her sad and stressed because she had to leave the place she wanted to be. Did she love her mother? A pause, long enough to stop my heart. Then, yes. But I still want to live with my dad. Crane asked if she'd like Vanessa to adopt her. Sophia looked right at Vanessa, who was daintily dabbing at delicate tears, and said, yes, I'd love that. Simone tried to cross-examine, but there was nothing to work with. Sophia wasn't being coerced or manipulated in any obvious way. She was articulate and consistent. She simply wanted a different life than the one I could provide. The judge asked Sophia a few questions directly. Did she understand that seeing her mother less would mean less time together, possibly losing some of their relationship? Sophia said she understood, but she needed to do what was best for her, and living in one place full-time was best. The judge thanked her and let her step down. Sophia walked past our table, and this time, she did glance at me. And what I saw in her eyes wasn't cruelty or anger. It was pity. My 12-year-old daughter pitied me. I felt something fundamental break inside my chest. Some structural support that held my heart in place. When Simone put me on the stand, I could barely answer her questions. Yes, I loved my daughter. Yes, I wanted what was best for her. No, I hadn't provided the same material advantages as Derek could. Yes, I understood Sophia wanted to live with them. No, I wouldn't agree to the adoption. My voice cracked on that last word, and I started crying. Ugly sobs I couldn't control. Judge Kowalski granted modified custody to Derek, with primary physical custody. I was granted visitation 1 weekend per month and alternating holidays, pending Sophia's willingness to participate. The adoption petition was denied without my consent, but the judge noted it could be revisited in the future if circumstances changed. The whole hearing took less than 2 hours. 2 hours to dismantle 6 years of single parenting, of sacrifice and love, of trying my absolute best. Walking out of that courtroom, I passed Derek and Vanessa in the hallway. Vanessa had her arm around Sophia, and all three of them looked relieved, happy, like a weight had been lifted. They'd won. I'd lost. The architecture of my life collapsed around me, and they stepped over the rubble without looking back. Simone touched my arm and asked if I was okay. I said yes. Because what else could I say? No, I'm not okay. I'll never be okay again. I just watched my daughter choose someone else. There were no words adequate to the moment. The first month after the custody change was survivable. Sophia came for her visitation weekend. Spent most of it in her room, but she came. I tried to make it special. Took her to the nice mall she liked, even though I couldn't afford to buy anything. Made elaborate meals she picked at. We went through the motions of mother-daughter time while a chasm stretched between us that neither of us knew how to bridge. She left Sunday afternoon without saying she loved me. Just a quick hug and a flat bye, Mom, before running to Derek's car. I closed the door, and the silence of the apartment was deafening. All those years I'd cherished our quiet time together, just the two of us. And now quiet felt like suffocation. I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion, drank it all, and passed out on the couch. When I woke up, it was midnight, TV infomercials blaring. I felt absolutely nothing. Not sad, not angry. Just a vast emptiness that stretched in all directions. The second month, Sophia canceled the visitation weekend. Derek texted that she had a birthday party for one of her school friends, some elaborate event at a country club. Could we reschedule? I typed, no, our custody agreement is clear. She needs to come. He texted back, forcing her to miss important social events will just make her resent you more. Do you really want that? I stared at the text for 10 minutes before responding, fine, we'll reschedule. We never did. The next month, she had a writing competition. The month after that, Vanessa's parents were visiting, and Sophia wanted to be there. Each excuse chipped away at the already minimal time we had. By month 5, she hadn't come for a visit in 3 months. I called Derek and demanded he honor the custody agreement. He said I should talk to Sophia myself. He gave me her new phone number, one I didn't have because no one had bothered to tell me it changed. I called, and she answered on the 5th ring, sounding annoyed. When I said it was me, there was a long pause before she said, oh. Hi. I asked directly why she wasn't coming for visits. She sighed, that same exasperated sigh I'd heard 1,000 times. She said she didn't want to. The apartment was depressing. I have friends and activities with my real family. Couldn't I just let her live her life? Real family. The words hit like a physical blow. I asked what that made me. Another pause, longer this time. Then, you're my birth mom, but Vanessa is my real mom now. Birth mom. A term for someone biological but not essential. Someone who'd provided genetic material and gestation but wasn't actually parenting. I told her I'd given up everything to raise her. She retorted, I didn't ask to be born. I didn't ask for you to struggle and be poor and make me feel guilty about wanting nice things. Her voice rose with each word, all the resentment she'd been storing pouring out. She said she was happier now. Actually happy for the first time she could remember. And I needed to accept that and stop trying to ruin it. Then she hung up. I called back. No answer. I called Derek. He said, maybe you should give Sophia some space to adjust to her new life. Space. What I'd given her was space to forget me entirely. I stopped eating regularly. Food lost all taste, became just fuel I occasionally remembered to consume. I lost 15 pounds in a month. My clothes hanging loose, my face gaunt in the bathroom mirror. At work, Dr. Patel pulled me aside, asked if everything was okay. I lied. Yes, everything's fine. Just tired. He looked at me with a concern that made me want to scream, suggesting I take time off. I insisted I was fine, then went to the bathroom and cried in a stall for 20 minutes. The hygienist in the mirror was a stranger, hollowed out, broken, someone I didn't recognize. At night, I'd lie in bed and replay every moment of Sophia's childhood, searching for where I went wrong. What could I have done differently? Should I have worked more, sacrificed more, somehow competed with Vanessa's unlimited resources? Or should I have let her go earlier, recognized sooner that maternal love couldn't compete with material comfort? The questions spiraled endlessly, with no answers. Month 7. Derek called from an unknown number. I answered, thinking it might be Sophia. His voice hit me like cold water. We need to talk. Vanessa and I have a proposal. If I agreed to voluntarily terminate my parental rights, they'd waive the child support I'd been paying monthly. It wasn't much, $200, but it was something. In exchange for giving up legal rights to Sophia, I'd save about $2,400 a year, and Vanessa could move forward with adoption. Everyone would get what they wanted. Sophia would have the family she'd chosen. I'd save money I clearly needed. And they'd have legal clarity. He presented it like a business deal, his voice neutral and professional. I asked if Sophia knew about this call. He said yes. The three of them had discussed it, and she thought it was a good solution. She'd actually suggested it, he added, as if that detail would make it more palatable. My daughter wanted me to legally terminate my rights as her mother. I asked if I could talk to Sophia before making any decisions. Derek hesitated, then said he'd have to ask her. He called back an hour later. She'd agreed to meet me at a Starbucks near their house on Saturday morning. Just the two of us, a chance to talk. I spent the days leading up to that meeting in a state of frantic, desperate hope. Maybe this was the breakthrough we needed. Maybe if I could just talk to her face to face, remind her of everything we'd been through, she'd remember that I loved her. I rehearsed what I'd say, practicing staying calm and non-accusatory. I wouldn't guilt-trip her, or cry, or make her feel bad. I'd just be honest about how much I loved her and wanted to be part of her life. I bought a new shirt for the meeting, something nice that didn't look as cheap as most of my wardrobe. I wanted her to be proud of me, to see that I was trying. Saturday morning, I arrived early and sat at a corner table, my hands shaking as I waited. Sophia walked in 20 minutes late, wearing an outfit that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. She changed so much in the 8 months since the custody modification. Taller, her face losing its childish roundness, her hair highlighted with expensive-looking streaks. She looked like a teenager from a catalog, polished, confident, and nothing like the little girl I'd raised. She sat down across from me without ordering anything, immediately checking her phone. I asked how she was doing. "Fine," she said. "Busy with school and writing and friends." I asked about her classes, her hobbies, trying to show interest. She answered in monosyllables, clearly impatient. Finally, I got to the point. I asked why she wanted me to terminate my parental rights. She put her phone down and looked at me directly for the first time. She said it would make everything easier. "Right now, I'm stuck in this weird limbo where legally you're my mother, but Vanessa is my actual mom. It's confusing and awkward when people ask about my family. If I signed the papers, she could just tell people Vanessa was her mom, and it would be true. She'd have the same last name as her family. She could stop feeling guilty about not wanting to see me. Everything would just be simpler and cleaner." She delivered this speech in a flat, practiced voice, like she'd rehearsed it. When she finished, she looked at me expectantly, waiting for my agreement. I asked if she understood what she was asking. She'd be giving up any legal relationship with me. I wouldn't be her mother in any official capacity. I couldn't make decisions about her life or have any rights if something happened. She said she understood, and that's what she wanted. Then she said something that destroyed whatever fragments of hope I'd been clinging to. "I want a normal life with my actual family. You're just making that harder by holding on. Just making it harder." That's what 13 years of love and sacrifice had been reduced to. An inconvenience she needed me to resolve by erasing myself from her life. I asked if she remembered when she was little. All the things we'd done together, the library trips, the pancake mornings, the blanket forts. "Do you remember when I painted butterflies on your wall because you said they made you feel like you could fly?" She looked uncomfortable, squirming in her chair like I was embarrassing her with sentimentality. She said she remembered, but that was a long time ago, and I'm different now. I asked if she loved me at all anymore. The question hung between us, desperate and pathetic. She took a long time to answer, looking everywhere except at my face. Finally, she said, "I don't know. I don't think about you that way anymore." Not even a lie to spare my feelings. Just clinical honesty that she'd moved on from me the way you'd move on from an old friend who no longer fit your life. I told her I wouldn't sign the papers. "I am your mother, and I love you, and I won't legally erase that relationship no matter how much you want me to. You can ignore me, and refuse visits, and pretend Vanessa is your mom. But legally, biologically, fundamentally, I will always be your mother." Her face hardened. She said I was being selfish, that I didn't really love her because if I did, I'd want her to be happy. All mothers put their children's needs first. Vanessa would sign the papers if positions were reversed because Vanessa actually cared about my well-being. The comparison was deliberate, designed to wound. And it worked. I felt tears start and tried to stop them, but they came anyway, streaming down my face in the middle of Starbucks while my daughter watched with something close to disgust. She stood up, said she had to go, and walked out without looking back. I sat there, crying, while other customers pretended not to notice. This broken woman, falling apart over lukewarm coffee, and the daughter who'd just emotionally executed her. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember the rest of that day. The next thing I clearly recall is lying in bed Sunday morning. A bottle of pills on my nightstand. Prescription sleeping medication my doctor had given me months ago that I'd barely used. The bottle was small, innocuous, but I kept staring at it, thinking how easy it would be. Just take all of them. Go to sleep. And not wake up to this pain anymore. No more missing Sophia. No more watching her choose another woman over me. No more feeling like a failure as a mother. Just quiet. And darkness. And release. I picked up the bottle, opened it, poured the pills into my palm. 23 small white tablets. Probably enough. I sat there for what felt like hours. Pills in one hand, phone in the other. I should call someone. My sister, my friend, anyone. But what would I say? My daughter doesn't want me anymore, so I'm going to kill myself? It sounded melodramatic, pathetic. Maybe it was. Maybe I was pathetic. Maybe Sophia was right to choose a better life without me. I took the first pill dry, feeling it stick in my throat. Then the second. The third. By the fifth one, my hands were shaking so badly I dropped the rest. They scattered across my bedspread, little white dots against the blue fabric. I looked at them, and suddenly, a thought screamed through my mind: what if Sophia found out I was dead? Would she feel guilty? Would she cry at my funeral? Or would she just feel relieved that the inconvenience of me was permanently solved? The thought of her relief, of my death making her life easier, filled me with a rage so pure and intense that it cut through the suicidal fog. I ran to the bathroom and forced myself to throw up, my fingers down my throat, purging the pills I'd swallowed. I vomited until there was nothing left, then collapsed on the tile floor, my cheek pressed against the cold porcelain. I lay there for a long time, body shaking, and made a decision. I wouldn't die for Sophia. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction or the freedom. I'd survive. I'd build a life that had nothing to do with her. And if she ever came back, she'd find someone who didn't need her anymore. The very next morning, I called a therapist. Her name was Dr. Louise Franklin, and she specialized in family trauma and loss. Her office was warm, with soft lighting and comfortable chairs, the kind of place designed to make broken people feel safe enough to break further. I sat across from her and told the entire story. From Sophia's birth to yesterday's pill bottle, not sparing myself any details. I laid bare my failures as a mother, my inability to compete with Vanessa's money, my rage, my grief, my suicidal impulses. Dr. Franklin listened without judgment, taking occasional notes. And when I finished, she said something that changed my perspective entirely. She said Sophia hadn't rejected me as a person. She'd rejected the life circumstances I represented: poverty, struggle, limitation. At 13, she didn't have the maturity to separate her mother from the material conditions of their life together. That didn't excuse her cruelty, but it contextualized it. She was a child, making choices with an incomplete understanding of consequences. The question was whether I'd let those choices define the rest of my life. Therapy became my anchor. Twice-a-week sessions where Dr. Franklin helped me process the grief of losing a living child, a loss more complicated than death because Sophia was out there, thriving without me. We worked on separating my worth as a person from my relationship with my daughter. We developed coping strategies for the crushing loneliness. We discussed the termination of parental rights and whether I should consider it. Dr. Franklin never told me what to do, she just helped me think through the implications. If I signed, I'd have no legal connection to Sophia, ever again. No way to reconnect if she changed her mind as an adult. No claim to grandchildren if she had them someday. But I'd also be free from child support, free from the legal obligation to maintain a relationship that brought me nothing but pain. The decision was mine. I decided to wait, to sit with it, before making something so permanent. Derek sent the papers 3 more times over the next month. I didn't sign them, but I didn't throw them away either. I kept them in a drawer, a possibility I wasn't ready to actualize. 6 months into therapy, Dr. Franklin suggested I might benefit from volunteer work. Something to remind me I had value beyond my failed relationship with Sophia. She recommended a local organization that worked with foster children, kids aging out of the system who needed mentorship and support. I was resistant at first. The idea of being around other people's children felt like salt in an open wound. But Dr. Franklin pushed gently, suggesting it might help me process my grief, to give to children who actually wanted what I had to offer. So, I signed up. My first assignment was mentoring a 15-year-old girl named Destiny. She'd been in 7 foster homes and was about to age out with nowhere to go. She was angry and defensive, covered in an armor I recognized because I was wearing my own version. We met weekly at a coffee shop, mostly sitting in silence while she glared at me, and I tried to think of non-intrusive questions. It took 3 months before Destiny started talking to me. Small things at first, complaints about her current foster home, the social worker who kept promising things would get better. Eventually, bigger things. Her mother had been addicted to meth and chose drugs over her daughter. Her father was unknown. Every adult in her life had failed her repeatedly. She didn't trust anyone, and she sure as hell didn't need some random volunteer trying to fix her. I told her I wasn't trying to fix her. I was just showing up because I'd committed to showing up. She could talk or not talk. I'd be there either way. That honesty seemed to disarm her. The next week, she asked about my life, why I was doing this. I told her the truth. I had a daughter who didn't want me, and sitting across from someone else's pain made my own feel slightly less suffocating. Destiny laughed, the first time I'd heard her laugh, and said that was the most depressing reason for volunteering she'd ever heard. We bonded over shared damage. Destiny aged out of foster care 3 months later. She had nowhere to go, no support system. Her social worker was trying to find her a spot in transitional housing, but the waitlist was 6 months long. In the meantime, Destiny was couch surfing, showing up to our weekly meetings looking progressively more exhausted and defeated. I made a decision that surprised both of us. I asked if she wanted to stay with me temporarily until the housing came through. She looked at me with suspicion. "What do you want in return?" she asked. I said, "Nothing. Just someone to share the apartment with so it feels less empty." She moved in with a garbage bag of belongings and claimed Sophia's old room, sleeping in the bed my daughter hadn't used in over a year. That first week was awkward, both of us navigating shared space and uncertain boundaries. But slowly, we developed a rhythm. I'd make breakfast before work, and she'd still be sleeping. I'd come home, and she'd have cleaned the apartment or started dinner with groceries I'd left money for. Destiny started opening up about her life in ways she hadn't during our mentorship sessions. The abuse she'd experienced in some foster homes. The parents who'd treated her like a paycheck rather than a person. The profound loneliness of being unwanted. I listened, and I shared my own story. The daughter who'd chosen money over love. The grief that still lived in my chest like a permanent resident. We were both abandoned women, just at different life stages. 3 months turned into 6 months. The transitional housing finally came through, but Destiny asked if she could stay longer. She'd gotten a job at Target, saving money for her own place eventually. I said yes, grateful for the company, for the distraction. We weren't mother and daughter. We were something else. Some new configuration of family built on mutual trauma and tentative trust. Having her in the apartment changed something fundamental. The silence wasn't suffocating anymore. The butterflies on the bedroom wall weren't a painful reminder of Sophia. They were just butterflies. One night, about 8 months after Destiny moved in, we were watching TV, and she asked if I'd ever consider fostering officially. She said there were kids like her everywhere who needed safe places to land, and I clearly had room. The question surprised me. I'd never thought about fostering. Had assumed my failure with Sophia disqualified me from parenting anyone else. But Destiny pointed out that she was still here, still choosing to stay, even though she had housing options now. Maybe I was better at this than I thought. The idea planted itself in my mind and grew over the following weeks. Finally, I called the foster care agency. I signed up for classes, spent 10 weeks learning about trauma-informed care and attachment disorders and managing behavioral issues. The training was intense but illuminating. I learned that many foster children rejected their foster parents not because the parents failed, but because rejection was a survival strategy, a way to maintain control in chaotic lives. I became certified as a foster parent. My first placement was twin sisters, 8 and 10 years old, who'd been removed from their parents after years of neglect. They arrived with garbage bags of clothes and haunted eyes that reminded me of Destiny. The first weeks were chaos. The older sister, Veronica, was parentified and controlling. The younger, Delilah, had selective mutism and wouldn't speak to anyone except Veronica. They broke things, testing whether I'd send them back. They hoarded food under their beds, convinced scarcity was coming. They had nightmares that woke the whole apartment. I was overwhelmed, exhausted, and pretty sure I'd made a terrible mistake. But Dr. Franklin reminded me that healing wasn't linear, that these children had no reason to trust me yet. So, I kept showing up. Made breakfast every morning, got them to school, established routines. Slowly, incrementally, they started to relax. 3 months in, Delilah spoke to me for the first time. We were making cookies, and she asked if she could lick the spoon. Such a small moment, but it felt monumental. I said yes and watched her carefully taste the batter, then smile, then ask for more. Veronica started loosening her control, accepting that I'd handle adult responsibilities. They stopped hoarding food once they understood it would always be available. The nightmares decreased. 6 months in, they called me Mom for the first time. Not their mother, never that. But Mom as a term of address. I burst into tears right there in the kitchen, and they looked alarmed until I explained these were happy tears. The concept seemed foreign to them. I realized they'd probably never seen an adult cry from joy. Their caseworker mentioned their parents' rights might be terminated. That adoption could be possible if things continued progressing well. The idea terrified and excited me in equal measure. I could have daughters again. Not the daughter I'd lost, but daughters who actually wanted me. The adoption was finalized 2 years after Veronica and Delilah came to live with me. The courtroom was packed with social workers, case managers, and Dr. Franklin. Destiny sat in the front row, 19 now, enrolled in community college, studying to be a social worker herself. The judge asked if I understood the responsibilities I was taking on, if I committed to parenting these children until adulthood. I said yes, my voice strong and clear. Nothing like the broken woman who'd sat in a different courtroom 5 years earlier, watching her biological daughter choose someone else. Veronica and Delilah sat on either side of me, their small hands in mine. And when the judge declared the adoption final, they both hugged me tight enough to hurt. These were my daughters now. Chosen family built on shared healing rather than shared blood. I thought about Sophia for a brief moment. Wondered if she'd even remember today was happening. Then pushed the thought away. She was my past. Veronica and Delilah were my future. Life rebuilt itself around my new reality. I was a mother of 2, raising girls who actually wanted to be my daughters. My apartment felt too small, so I moved us to a small house with a yard where the girls could play. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. I got promoted at work to office manager, better money, regular hours. Destiny moved into her own apartment, but came over for dinner twice a week. We were a patchwork family. None of us related by blood, but all related by choice. The pain of losing Sophia never disappeared completely. Some nights, I'd lie awake and wonder what she was doing, if she ever thought about me, if she regretted her choice. But those nights became less frequent. The acute grief faded to a dull ache I'd learned to live with. Dr. Franklin said that was normal, that losing a child to estrangement was a kind of ambiguous loss that never fully resolved. I'd probably always carry it, but I'd also learned I could carry it while still building a full life. Sophia turned 18 without any contact from me. I didn't send a card or call. What would I say? Happy birthday to the daughter who erased me from her life? I thought about or probably having a big party at Derek's mansion, surrounded by people who had no idea I existed. The thought should have hurt more than it did, but I was busy planning Delilah's 10th birthday party, figuring out how many kids we could fit in our backyard. My attention and energy went to the daughters who wanted it. 5 more years passed. Veronica graduated high school and headed to state college on scholarship. Delilah joined the swim team and discovered a talent for butterfly stroke. I dated occasionally, nothing serious, but open to the possibility of companionship again. My life wasn't what I'd imagined at 22, young and in love with my baby daughter. It was different. Smaller in some ways, bigger in others, built on a foundation of loss and resurrection. I survived because I had to, because giving up would have meant Sophia's rejection won. Instead, I won. I chose life. The knock on my door came on a Saturday morning when I was making pancakes for Delilah, who was 13 now and still loved our weekend breakfast tradition. I wasn't expecting anyone. Veronica was at college, and Destiny was working. I opened the door, and time stopped. Standing on my porch was Sophia. 15 years older than the last time I'd seen her. Dressed in clothes that screamed expensive but looked rumpled, like she'd been wearing them too long. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Her hands twisted together nervously. Behind her was a beaten-up car I didn't recognize, probably a rental. We stared at each other for a long moment, and I waited for feelings to hit. Rage. Grief. Joy. Anything. But I felt that same flat numbness from 15 years ago. That protective distance my psyche had built to keep me functional. This stranger on my porch had my daughter's face, but wasn't my daughter. Not anymore. She opened her mouth to speak, and I knew exactly what she was going to say. Some variation of, "Hello, I'm back. I need you." The script was predictable. I didn't let her start. In a voice that was calm and firm and completely devoid of emotion, I said, "I have 2 daughters, and you are not one of them." Her face crumpled, shock and hurt warring for dominance. She tried to speak again, and I continued, "My daughters are inside having breakfast. They're the only children I have. You made your choice 15 years ago, and I've moved on. Please leave my property." Behind me, I heard Delilah's footsteps approaching, curious about who was at the door. I didn't want her to see this. Didn't want Sophia's reappearance to contaminate the life I'd built. Sophia saw Delilah over my shoulder, and something like understanding crossed her face. She opened her mouth one more time, but I'd already closed the door, the lock clicking into place with a finality that felt earned. Through the window, I watched her stand there for another minute before walking back to her car and driving away. Delilah asked who that was. I said, "Just someone looking for directions. Nobody important." We finished making pancakes and ate them while discussing her upcoming swim meet. Later that day, Destiny called to tell me my mother had been trying to reach me, that Sophia had contacted her, crying about being turned away. I told Destiny I didn't want to discuss it. That chapter of my life was closed. She understood. She'd built her own life separate from the mother who'd chosen drugs over her daughter. We both knew sometimes love wasn't enough. Sometimes rejection was the healthier choice. That evening, I got texts from my sister and my aunt, both begging me to give Sophia another chance, to at least hear her out. I blocked their numbers without responding. I'd learned in therapy to protect my peace at all costs, even from family who thought they knew better. My daughters, the ones I'd chosen and who'd chosen me, were the only family that mattered now. Sophia had gotten exactly what she wanted 15 years ago. A life without me in it. I'd simply decided I wanted the same thing, a life without her. We were finally perfectly even. This journey was one of the hardest things I've ever lived through. But I came out stronger. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved deeply to protect your own peace? What would you have done in my place?